Cooper's, the stripper that gets it off every time. Hi everybody, I'm Simon and I'm back today to show you how to strip a internal window. And sorry for being a bit late to the start. The paint took a little longer to soften than we were expecting, which is a good thing to talk about. So I'll just hang my hat up and we'll talk a little bit about it. So this is a sash from out of a bungalow type window. It's a hinged window, and this stuff here is lead. This is liquefied lead. So you could melt that down and make a few sinkers out of that. So lead is always the one we always, people always talk about. Is it lead based, not lead based, all that sort of stuff. The reality is all paint's not good when you breathe it after it's been ground into dust with sandpaper. So we like it like this. Now let's just put that aside for a moment. So what we do is we always start off by spraying the stripper onto the surface. So this is a real old gnarly one, and you can see in the paint surface all this alligatoring in there. That's where coats underneath have cracked and more paint's going over the top, and it's just had years and years and years of getting baked by the sun, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. Anyway, somewhere along the line you've got to take it off, and so we start by putting the stripper on. We did this on here about half an hour ago, and so that's I was expecting at the start to have that done a little bit quicker, but the lead that was underneath it just wanted to be longer. So we put the stripper on like I just showed you there, and this is a three-step system. It's Cooper's, and I'll just get my brochure, which has inside it the method. So part one, you've got to take off what's on the surface, and it says put the stripper on, wait for it to reach the surface, which can take anywhere from a couple of minutes to an hour depending on what you're stripping. When you've got something like weatherboards or windows that have been baked in the sun, the paints go more hard, they actually go more metal-like. And so in this case we've got three types of paint. We've got this top stuff, this all ripply bubbly stuff, and that's actually an acrylic for some reason. It shouldn't actually have an acrylic on a window because they tend to stick, but there it is. And underneath that we've got enamel, then we've got lead. So what you normally do is you put the stripper on and you keep it wet with the stripper, as we just keep it sort of damp with it. If you get bubbles forming, these bubbles, by putting more stripper on top of that, you're just throwing your money away because the stripper can't get access to the layers underneath. So what we do there normally is we just, sliding around, we just lightly drag that off. And we're not expecting it to go all the way to the wood. We're just wanting to get rid of what's there, so what's left we have clean access to. So on that goes. Now, normally you find an acrylic paint will go sort of rubbery like, then enamels will tend to do like a blister, like you normally expect paint strippers to do. And then when you get to lead, it actually doesn't bubble at all. It actually turns into like a paste. And these layers down here are your lead ones, and they just take longer to soften. But you just go and have a cup of tea or something or do another job, and it will do it all for you. And let's get that off. That's all, again, the lead. Now, this blade we have here, we call it our 4-edge blade. It's got these extensions on the end here, and they're ideal for getting into these parts here. And if you've left it for a good amount of time, you can get into those parts. Can you imagine sanding into these? It'd just be a nightmare. I saw a job once where that actually this beading had been completely sanded out, and it was just a a flat bevel where the actual moulding was like this to start with. So the blades just uses a drag action like we always do. Do it softly. Don't push hard. Let the stripper do the softening, and then the blade just is removing. And then we back on with the stripper. Now our stripper is virtually pH neutral, so it's not going to do any damage to the surface. And what these jobs need, where they've had that years and years of baking, is they just need the stripper to soften it all up and do its thing. Where you've often, if you've seen other videos where it's on varnish, where it's all done and dusted in a couple of minutes, on these type of ones, you just got to give it the longer soak. But it's not like you're standing there watching it, like I say, doing other things. Now, from time to time, just do little tests. You can have a listen to this. You can hear that crunch. That's still hard lead. There are parts that are going mushy, but it just needs a little longer. So, which is why we started a little later than we wanted to. It's because we wanted it to soften properly. Now, I put strip back on here, and part 2 on the guide is where we strip what's in the surface. And it says to apply the stripper, wait a couple of minutes. It says to scrub the surface with the correct scrubbing material. So in the case of a window that's on the inside of the house, so the interior surface, you can use steel wool. If we were doing the exterior of this window, we would use our grip pads. Because outside, if a bit of metal gets caught in the wood, it can cause a rust dot to form. So we don't want that. So, we'll just check a bit more of this. Now, try not to slip. Okay, so I'll give that a scrub with our steel wool. So this is our wool. It's a European wool, long stranded, sharp, and ideal for this sort of thing. We'll just move some of this to the side. One of the questions you get often asked is what's it like on glass? It won't damage the glass at all. If it's got a coating on it, like if someone's put a film on it for UV or something, then yes, it'll destroy that. But if it's straight glass, then it's all good. So let's do this bit. So steel wool, wet with stripper. So we give it a wet scrub, and that all does its thing. Corners are always where you spend more time. And we also have our, if it dries out, like if you scrubbed it dry, just make sure you wet it up again before you do anything. This is one of our copper detail brushes. These are ideal in these sort of places. You're not pushing hard, you're just letting the bristles do the job. If you can just let the stripper do its job, give it at the time it needs. As you watch different ones of these videos, you'll see there's a very different amounts of times that we use it for, depending on the job. So that's pretty clean in there. Before we go any further with it, you might see in the background our window. This is a window that we've dragged all around New Zealand many times at lots of the home shows you may have seen us at, and it's also the star of our brochure, and it's a great window. It's seen many miles, so we thought we'd bring it out today for everyone to see. Now let's have a little check to see how that's going. So that's, majority of it's mushy, got that mush sound. Bit of a crunch there, so no point forcing it through, just let it do its thing. And or lead. So with lead it's not a worry when it's wet. It's not like you've got ground dust that you're breathing up. And a lot of people are all very, very concerned about using a chemical. It's a great word, chemical. And what we're more interested in is not breathing dust. We're an anti-dust company. The dust's where the true dangers lie. So just leave that for a moment. So what you would normally do is not go any further until you've got that all up to the same point. But just so I can keep you entertained, we'll go on to the next part. And we will show you part 3 of the guide. So, over here, part 3, you'll notice it's coloured in blue, and that goes with the blue liquid that I have here. Now, part 3 is flushing the surface clean. And the same logic applies to anything else we strip, and that is the person that made this sash sanded it for you. And you can actually, if you zoom right up close, you might even see some of the original sanding marks. And you can see that that was put there by the joiner who made it 100 odd years ago. And our system's all about reusing the sanding that already exists. So let me show you how we do that. So this is what we call a grit embedded pad, and if I move it around you might see little sparkles, and they're the grits that are embedded into the nylon. And it's quite coarse, but we're not trying to sand it. All we're trying to do is get those grits into those sanding marks and to push out all the soft stuff that's there already. The flusher is a paraffin based spirit, and we spray, we lightly scrub, and we use a paraffin based spirit flusher to give us more time to do our scrubbing. It stays wetter longer. If we used meths or thinners, those sorts of things, it dries far too fast and the actual residues sort of soak back into the grain, and we don't want that. We want to be able to keep the surface wet long enough for us to be able to put it onto a rag, and again there's sort of liquefied lead residues in there, and then we get ourselves a clean one of our brushes. And we just effectively are sweeping the surface. Now when you do a window normally, like the one in the background I showed you before, some parts of the window you can't do on a bench because it's still bolted into your wall. So you can, there'll be videos that we do where we'll be on sites at clients' places and we'll be showing you where we do it in situ. But if you are quite happy to take a sash out, then it does make for an easier job because you can do it on a bench. Now, we have a saying, and that is spray, scrub, spray, wipe. So you saw me spray, scrub with the grit pad, spray, wipe with a rag. And the rag takes the residues off and put them onto the rag. Now, when it's wet like this, at this point here, this is your looking glass. This tells you what it will look like with a new finish on. So this wet colour is the colour it would look like if you put a clear new finish on. And this is the bottom of the window sash, so this edge along here is usually where, if you're going to have any mould or any of those sorts of things build up, that's where you would see if you do or don't. before I talk more about that, let's see how this is. So that's doing its thing. Put that there. Now I might just see how that, we started there before. So there's quite a distinction between the stuff you strip off the surface to start with to the stuff that you're getting out of the grain itself. And at the start, it gets all those top layers off, as I showed you before, and then this one here I found was around about a 20-minute soak. The stuff on the top, about 10 minutes to take off, and then it's about 20 minutes, half an hour to get through what was left. I found that the stuff on the edge here was thinner. That's where it's been going in and out of the window over the years, so the stuff in here was the stuff that was thicker, and that yellowy stuff down there is again your lead. And so as long as it's all wet, there's no drama to you. We often get asked, how much do you do at a time? And the answer to that is it all depends on how quick you can work and how comfortable it is, the job itself. If you've got too much time up your sleeve, then you're not doing enough. If you're struggling and sort of racing, it's because you're probably being a little bit too ambitious. So just find that level that works for you. Now, another little trick to show you. In these corners are always the ones that you spend a bit more time on. So get your wool, open it up, get your blade, and you can get into those parts. And then you're in there, and then with the brush. These detail brushes are amazing. The handle is got this real weird shape, but it allows you to sort of get in there without having your knuckles in there. And the bristles are sloping forwards so that they, again, can allow you to sweep things out. Okay. And then get the roots out there as well. Now down the bottom here in the bottom corner, you see this bit of black there. That's probably a bit of rusting, a bit of mould. What you got to do is decide what is character and what's ugly. And if you go and try and make something brand new, you're going to spend a huge amount of time doing that. I personally would put that down to character. The time it's in the sash, it'll cut most of that off. But everyone's beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and so you get to decide. Now, we do our final wipe off. Now it'd be really easy just to show you a piece in here, but we wanted to do a corner so that you saw all that side of things. Okay, now before I talk about a wood finish, let's do another check on our friend over here. You hear that noise again? That's the noise I was hearing just before we were supposed to start filming. But that extra 10 minutes just turned it to rubber. We may not even get to take that off on camera today, but that's exactly what we're doing there. So that's prepared. If you wanted to paint it, you've now got a clean, dry, absorbent surface, and that's ready for a paint, and the new primer and undercoats will soak deep into the grain, and there's nothing to get in the way to make anything peel off. If you were to have heat gunned this window, you may have decided, oh well, I'll heat gun off. What you'll end up doing is cracking the glass, and there'll be a few people out there that will relate to that. Also, you bring oil to the surface, and that will cause new finishes to peel. The best way to make new paint stick is to have an absorbent surface. If you want to polyurethane it, same thing. If you want to oil it, the same game again. We, however, have a wood finish. Oop, slip over. You've probably seen this a few times. This is our moisturizer. This is a blend of gum, oil and wax. Think of it like a skincare for wood. When you have a window, it's sitting in the sun, and it's going to get smashed by the, and especially in New Zealand here, we've got the ozone hole, we've got the ultraviolet, and it just murders wood finishes. And so when you put a lot of finishes that go into the sun, they're up against a pretty harsh treatment. And we tend to go and see these magic finishes each week as we do different events around the place and see how they just haven't stood up. So, the moisturizer goes on, and it will soak in, like a skincare, leather care type finish. And it soaks in, and it'll soak and soak and soak, and you leave it for a few days, and you just watch it each day to see what it's up to. I fully expect this edge here to fully drink it up, because that's where it's had most of the weathering over the years. And this is, and as you look for its wet reflection the next day, if it's disappeared, then it's telling you that it wants more, and your job is to simply slap more on top. You don't have to worry with moisturizer about how dusty it is, about how hot or cold it is, whether it's raining or not, humidity, anything like that. The moisturizer will just, it doesn't care, it just goes through, because effectively it's not drying, it's actually staying wet. And sometimes people go, oh, I don't want a wet window. Well, the good news is you don't get a wet window. After a couple of days, if you're happy that it's not absorbing anymore, what you do is you now buff off the surplus. Now, if you can't get back to it for a week or more, it doesn't matter. A lot of people do this on the weekends, so you can just leave it all week and it's quite happy. It doesn't matter if dust gets on it, it doesn't matter if someone touches it, it doesn't matter at all. But when you are back to it, and a few days later, you get yourself a dry cloth and you simply remove the surplus. Now this sash is made from Totra, a New Zealand native. And it's a very, very oily timber, which is why it's so good to be used for posts and battens and all sorts of things around New Zealand farms. And so it's a disaster for varnishing on if you've brought those oils to the surface. But with this, no worries. Now, if I've got a solid bench and I've, say, cramped it down to the bench, I can spend a bit more time messing around in the corner and all that sort of stuff, and you can get it to whatever level you want. I'll just have another check of this. Now, is there any other things I was supposed to talk about, Arthur? George?
I think that was everything.
So you can see this is well on its way, but this layer in here, it just needs that extra time. You can see it's starting to come apart, but if I do it now, I'm forcing it. I'm not getting the best value out of the product. So what I do is, because it's got that crunchy sound, I put more on, I leave it, and probably in about 5-10 minutes, that'll be all soft and mushy, and it'll all look like this. So there we are. So anyone out there, we haven't talked about our website today. Here, coopersstripclub.com. You can find out all about the products there. We air freight all over the world. So if you have someone that New Zealand has people from all over the world. So if you have someone anywhere that would be interested in Coopers, if you share it with them, that'd be cool. People can send photographs to us so we can give you advice on how to go about it. There is nothing that this won't strip that I've ever found in nearly 40 years. It's all versions of the same method. It's just learning through your first sample what's required for it. So we'll see you again tomorrow, a little earlier, and we'll have something else to surprise you with. So thanks for watching.